Em
and Lex,
two imperfect six-figure business coaches, co-founders, and friends who decided to combine our superpowers to bring to market something we wish we had when we entered the world of coaching.
a real, non-BS, intimate, and fun community built with integrity, intention, and a few glasses of wine.
In this podcast, we get real.
Real about life,
Business,
relationships,
and what it really takes to find your version of success in the world of coaching. Are you ready, Lex?
I'm set, Em.
Let's coach. Hey, Lex.
Hi, Em. And
Hi, Corie.
Corie.
Hi, Barbie.
Guys, we have the bestest person ever with us today, and you are so blessed to have her in your earbuds or on your screen if you're watching on YouTube.
We dressed up for all of you today. I have a cashmere cardigan over a workout top, so that looks like I'm trying. Corie is rocking probably her child's hoodie.
It's mine, but
I felt like you borrowed stuff, and Lexi's wearing.
I'm at least branded. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm on brand.
Lex, I think we should make Ready Set Coach pajamas, so then we could roll straight, and they could be the ones with the pockets and the really soft ones, and then we could just roll straight from bed into work, and it's no big deal because we're still branded.
Totally agree. Would you buy it, Corie?
1,000,000% would I buy
All right,
that.
idea validated. So next step, we have another shout out to Alexandria, who is our print on demand coach and specialist. Girl, if you are listening, feel free to pitch us the
Pajamas.
next PJ line. Yes.
Yeah, I'm like, what else could we wear? Bathing suits? Oh my gosh, like Baywatch style bathing suits?
Oh,
Oh, well, okay.
I think I might sit that one out, but maybe a cute cover up.
I was gonna say I'm with you, Corie. I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna get excited.
Towels. How about that?
Towels.
Towels.
And sweat towels.
100%.
Oh, a hat. We should do hats, Lex.
We have a hat designed that
We do.
So we do we have an offer called, this is the sprint, right? The sprint? Yes. No. Yes. The sprint.
Conditioning camp.
Conditioning camp. Thank you.
Yep.
We have conditioning camp, and our clients who go through conditioning camp get to choose from 3 different swag items. Sorry, Corie, it's too hard to coordinate the choosing with a cohort. But okay, shouldn't have revealed this. We'll drop the link for y'all in case you want to buy it too. One of the news.
I love it. Well, so basically we just ideated our whole new shop that we're going to add on our website. So thank you, Corie. That was so helpful.
Yes, I'm glad I could be of help with the merch.
The merch. So guys, you know us, we're cool, but you know who's cooler? Corie. Corie, tell everyone, where do you live and who are you?
I live in San Diego, California. I used to say sunny San Diego, but we haven't seen the sun since like October. I think we live now in the Pacific Northwest. And I am lots of things, but I am a parent to 3 kiddos who are a senior, an 8th grader, and a 5th grader. I have been married to my husband for over 20 years. So you might be thinking, wow, she got married at 12. You are right. I was right. And no, just kidding. And I also am an executive functioning coach. And so I help neurodiverse people figure out all the things that will help them live more balanced, calm, happier, fulfilled existences, whatever that looks like for them. So I help families, I help teens, I help college kids, I help adults. And I'm moving into also advocacy work for people as they navigate schools and businesses as neurodiverse individuals.
Wait, Emily, I have to do the transition before you have a question because she teed it up, and then on you. I know you're deflated, but guys, okay, so here's the puntrition of the day. So before this call, Emily was on another call, and it gave me really, really bad anxiety because she like leaves me hanging all the time, and she actually joins the meeting on time where I'm like an early bird, right? So I don't know if I have like a form of ADHD or I don't know. It really gets my blood boiling. But so my point being is there might be an element of that that relates to stress management, which as an executive functioning coach, I know you help people with, right, Corie? Maybe I should have done this before your intro.
Yeah, but no, I like it. Yeah. Yeah, I can help you manage your stress as you're waiting. And it says like host is in another meeting and you like feel your heart rate start to go up and you get a little sweaty and you're just like, you go to that catastrophic thinking like, she's never going to join. I'm going to be in this host waiting room forever. I live here now. Yes.
So
That's
Corie,
what I do.
this is going to be like a couples therapy session is basically what we've decided. Because I've never abandoned Lexie before. I've always shown, are you going to, have I?
I don't know.
Is there a time that you want to bring to Corie that I've abandoned you?
Like, well, no. Okay. Generally speaking, no. If I can't think of a specific example, I should probably let that go. Right. Okay. Very big of me. Continue.
Anywho, so it's funny. We do have we definitely have two different sides of managing things. So when you think about what Lex feels when she's waiting, I like to bang out my calls. Otherwise, I will take naps in between each call, or I'll let each call go 30 minutes over. So I can't create those like extra times because then I'll be like, well, I'm too honest of an Abe kind of person where they'll keep talking and be like, do you have 5 more minutes? And I'll be like, yeah, I do. And then there I am. So now I'm talking for 45 minutes instead of 30 minutes. So that's why I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I got to run. I have a podcast I have to record and then I can get off the call.
Perfect. And Lexie, that makes you feel anxious.
Yes, because we have this podcast recording. I was like, I would love to check in with Emily for 2 minutes before Corie gets here. So we can like confer on what we're going to talk about. Right. So I guess it depends on the scenario. If it's just a me and Em co-working session, she can come on time. Fine. But in things that like events that we're hosting or public facing things or our coaching programs, we have time blocked time before group coaching. At this point, we've learned she's allowed me to do that. But besides our couple problems, okay, what I wanted to get at, let's take a step back because when I met you, Corie, the concept of executive functioning was new to me. I was like, oh, like CEOs functioning well, right? That's what comes to mind. So can we start there and let's educate our listeners a little bit or remind them if they already know what this is.
Yes. And I'm going to get in a little bit into the brain because as you guys know, I love the brain too. So executive functioning are the set of skills that allow us basically to live in a community, to thrive in a society, to be social creatures, right? And they live in the prefrontal cortex. So that is like from your eyelid or your eyebrows up to the middle of your head right here. And why that is important is because, do you guys know when the prefrontal cortex is fully developed?
7.
Good guess.
27.
25.
Yeah, late 20s.
Okay.
20s. And for neurodiverse folks, it can fluctuate. So it's really important to remember that for a big chunk of our lives, that part of our brain, I say, is under construction, right? So those of you with littles, right? When your kiddo is losing their mind in the middle of Target because you are not going to buy the popcorn that's, on the wall or whatever, that is because their prefrontal cortex is not developed yet. They're doing something that is completely appropriate. So it's also helpful to remember that. And what this prefrontal cortex allows us to do is it allows us to problem solve. It allows us to think critically. It allows us to have impulse control. It allows us to navigate and figure out what's going to be in our working memory and what's going to be in our long-term memory. It allows us to communicate well with others. And it allows us to prioritize and organize and use time management. So it's really, really, really essential to all of the things that our society thinks is really important for successful people, right? And another thing that's interesting when I talk about executive functioning, especially with parents, since you both are parents, is think about, even your schooling. What schools require of kids in elementary school, middle school, high school, and even college in terms of executive functioning, and then think about where our brains are developed at that time. We want a lot from the people in our world, especially the young people and young adults. So executive functioning is something that if you have a challenge with it starting young, it can really set you up for this failure feedback loop where you're constantly being told you're not good enough, or you're not smart enough, which has nothing to do with intelligence, or you don't try hard enough, or you're lazy, or you're not living up to your potential. So it can really set folks up for like a lifetime of this negative self-talk, this negative self-image. And that is why a lot of adults come to me, and the first thing we have to dismantle is the stress and the self-talk and that inner critic that is telling them they're not good enough because these skills didn't come easy to them. And it has nothing to do with what kind of person they are or what kind of, like I said, not intelligence, work ethic, none of that has to do with it. It's literally how our brains are developing and our brains are forming.
It reminds me a lot of when we were younger. There was like the fast track and then the slower track. And people, I don't know if you guys had this in your school, but it was like, oh, you're in slow math. And that doesn't mean that that person's not smart. It just means that they're processing, or the way that it takes them a little longer to complete math, or it takes them longer to digest a problem or digest a situation. So Corie, I love how you explained executive functioning, because like Lexie said, I feel like it was definitely a new concept to us. And when you hear a word, or when you hear a phrase or something, I feel like it's everywhere. Now that we know about executive functioning, I don't know if this is your world too, Lex, but I swear everyone's like, oh, her executive functioning skills could be improved, or I clearly have ADHD and no executive functioning. And I'm like, did all of a sudden we all got like an updated version of Webster's dictionary in our brain? Is that what happened?
Right. Well, the other word actually I hear that, Corie, I'd love for you to dissect too, neurodivergent. Emily, you have personal background connected to that word. When I met you, Corie, by definition, that was a new term for me. Now that I know that word, everywhere.
And also, Lex, even though I have a personal connection to it, when my sister described a neurodiverse person, I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, didn't you know this person is neurodiverse? And I was like, no, I didn't. It wasn't something that clicked. And now, yes, to your point, I feel like neurodivergent, ADHD, executive functioning kind of are like these three little blocks that hang out together.
So what does that mean, neurodivergency, Corie? Can you give us, is it the same thing as executive functioning? Does it have a different definition, just for those who maybe like Em and I at one point were unfamiliar?
Yeah. So I like what Em just said, where they like hang out together. They're buddies, right? So you can have executive dysfunction and not be neurodiverse. You can be neurodiverse and not necessarily have executive dysfunction challenges. Most folks that are neurodiverse do struggle with some executive functioning. Some struggle with all the executive functioning, some have pockets, right? So neurodiverse, kind of in like a Cliff Notes version, means that the brain processes, stores, and relays information differently than a neurotypical brain. So processing speed, or the way processing happens, social cues, being able to organize thoughts and store them, and then also retrieve them, being able to make sense of stimuli around us. So some of the big terms that people are familiar with that fall under this umbrella are ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, anxiety, dyslexia. Those all fall under the umbrella of neurodiversity.
Anxiety does?
Pardon?
Just someone with an anxiety disorder is considered neurodiverse?
Yes.
So I'm neurodiverse.
Yes. Lexie, welcome to the club.
She's executively functioning. Lex, how can people find out how to work with us?
Super simple. Go to readysetcoachprogram.com, link in show notes.
A lot of folks you know, in the world, and nothing is wrong with this, have anxiety, like, or like experience anxiety times. But if for those of us, Lexie, we're in this together, that have generalized anxiety disorder,
Yes.
that is considered a neurodiversity. It is the way that our brains process information differently and make sense of it in our bodies, right? Which is why someone with general anxiety disorder is triggered in a different way. It's why our brains ruminate on things. It's why we get into fight and flight really fast, because our brains are processing stimuli in a different way than neurotypical people.
Corie, was that always the case? ADHD, ADD, anxiety, was that always grouped under neurodivergency?
You know what? I actually don't know, like, if you look at the like DSMs, like when that kind of clicked over. So I can't speak to that exactly for a long time. And the other thing to know is that within look at Lexie.
Lexie's
Like moment we just had.
Lexie, I am calling you after this. We're gonna have a coffee. We're gonna breathe together.
Goes into anxiety disorder on podcast. Okay. Sorry.
But the other thing to know is that under this umbrella, I think of it as this like Venn diagram, but not a 2-circle Venn diagram. They're all overlapping. So oftentimes people, not all the time, that have anxiety also have ADHD, or have ADHD also have dyslexia. And the thing to remember, what makes neurodiversity different than like a learning disability, is it has nothing to do with like IQ or how you can learn or intelligence. It really is a medical diagnosis. So people that are neurodiverse that are going into schools or into businesses qualify for accommodations under ADA. So in schools and workplaces, it's considered a medical diagnosis. Dyslexia is a little bit different because it also falls under learning disorders. So I want to give that little caveat. But and also autism, because usually there's other things going on as well. But if you show up to a situation, to a school with a strict ADHD diagnosis or ADHD and anxiety diagnosis, you'll qualify for medical accommodations, which aren't learning accommodations. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Sort of.
it does to me. And you know, besides this, me trying to like process life changing right now, something else that I wanted to kind of bring up is a lot of the components that the words, the feelings that you've identified in the explaining these broader definitions, we do, to your point, like anxiety, experience a lot, and a lot of coaches experience. And we actually invited you to speak, even though you were in our cohort. We also invited you to speak to our recent cohort, because it's so, your skill set and what you teach is so relevant to those in the coaching space and those entrepreneurs. So I'd love for us to be able to talk through some of your best tips. Emily, do you want to tee her up with our first question?
I do. So one of the biggest challenges that we see time and time again is the inner critic creeping up and taking over. So this negative self-talk where people feel imposter syndrome, or they feel like they've done all the work and no one shown up, and they want to burn it all down and crawl into a hole. So do you have any advice on taming the inner critic?
Yeah. Oh, girl, like you guys know. You know that like my inner critic is like a whole symphony. It's an orchestra that follows me around.
Very beautiful one.
Well, thank you. It depends on the day. So I think the first thing to recognize is exactly that. We're not alone in that. Every single human on the planet has an inner critic. And also to know that the inner critic is actually there to keep us safe. And as crazy as that sounds, the inner critic is there to make sure that we don't take any risks that might hurt us or do anything dangerous. And it goes way back to when we had to like live in caves and everything we did was dangerous. Right. And so we are still getting that same response in a time where we live in homes and we have all of the safety things around us that keep us as safe as possible. But we still respond to stresses like they're life-threatening, right? And Lexie, we are also the products of the most anxious people The ones that responded the fastest with that inner critic of, oh, don't do that. That would be dumb. Why are you always making stupid choices? You should just stay in the cave and be safe. They were the ones that went on to have families. The ones that were like, I don't care. Woohoo. They got
Survival of the fittest.
Exactly.
We got eaten.
Exactly. Emily was very lucky to be born because
Oh, guys.
by the saber-tooth tigers. Like,
I was petting the bear. I trained the bear to be my friend.
Exactly. We were shaking in the caves, like.
But we lived.
So the point to saying that is you're not alone, and it's a natural thing. So the first thing to do is to bring awareness to that inner critic, to really think about what is it that it's saying to you, and write it down. Write down all those things it's saying, even if it feels difficult. Breathe if you need to, take a breath, take a break, walk, but write it all down. And then go through with a non-judgmental and curious eye. That is the big thing, non-judgmental and curious. And look at each thing you wrote down and ask yourself a couple questions. The first one is it true? Is what you wrote down truth? Can you prove it? Right? So look at it with a scientific eye. The second thing is to ask, is it helpful? If your friend or loved one was going through the same thing and saying that to themselves, would you say, wow, that was really helpful, good job? Or would you say, oh, that was really unkind? And then the last thing to ask yourself is, where is it coming from? Why is it showing up there? Is it because of fear? Is it because of anxiety? Is it because it's a story somebody told you in the past that you keep repeating? And looking at that and literally eliminating the things that are untruthful, unhelpful, or from past stories. And then what I always invite people to do is write down the actual truth. It doesn't even have to be emotional. It can it can be neutral, right? It doesn't have to be, because some people feel uncomfortable with mantras that are like, yeah, rock on, you're amazing, go, go, go. Like, that doesn't feel authentic to them, right? So write down something that feels authentic and truthful and helpful, and put it on a sticky note and put it on your computer, put it on your mirror, put it on wherever you need to remind yourself. And then start paying attention to the difference in your physical sensations and in your emotions and how you act, right? That is the cycle there. What you do next when you start to tell yourself that more truthful, helpful thought rather than those untruthful, helpful thoughts.
I know Lexi's like taking rigorous notes right now. Do you think this is jumping off of this and also going back to anxiety earlier? Do you think someone can tame their inner critic and rewire their brain to not feel anxiety? Or is that something that you'll always be living with?
Both. So yes and no. So what neurological research shows, like through fMRI studies, is that your brain creates gray matter and creates new neurological connections the more you practice it. So it's like going to gym for your brain. So the more you bring awareness and practice to that reframe, to that change of, the easier it is for your brain to go there. Someone that has true anxiety disorder is always going to have anxiety. They're never going to be able to cure themselves. It's how the brain works. But what we can do is we can build in a set of thought systems that help strengthen the brain so that we don't go there so quickly. And what's really cool is the amygdala is the one that puts us in fight, flight, or freeze. And what we see now is that the more people practice this self-compassion, this self-love, this reframe, the amygdala actually starts to shrink. So it becomes less reactive. So there's scientific research that shows when we do this, and it's not just like, if you're going to run a marathon and you've never run before, it's not like tomorrow you're going to wake up and run the 26 miles and be breathless and wear the little silver blanket and be awesome. It takes time, and you have to build up, and it takes practice. And just like with anything else, it's not like linear. There's going to be dips and valleys. But the key is being as consistent as possible.
Yeah.
The other thing that I love to do is I love to name my inner critic.
Mm.
I love to put a face with it. So I have clients literally draw their inner critic. Like maybe it's a person, like mine. I always say mine is this mean girl from 7th grade, and I can picture her, and I won't say her name in case she's by chance listening to this podcast, but I picture her. And when she says these things to me, it's so easy for me to say, hey, like that's really unkind and that's unhelpful. And actually, what you're saying isn't truthful because I can picture her. Some people like to have little monsters, so picturing your inner critic also makes it a little less scary. It's like the monster under the bed that you can't see versus something that's right in front of you.
And you have a book that I know you've suggested a lot of our clients read. I feel like along the same lines, isn't it? Like your alter ego, what is it?
Yeah, the alter ego effect, basically high level. Like Beyonce doesn't go on stage as Beyonce, she goes on stage as Sasha Fierce. And like having that other, and I feel that so much when I'm speaking in front of audiences. Like I find it funny. I find it funny that I feel like so anxious and I get overwhelmed. But then when I get up there, it's not me that's up there. It's like this version of me takes over, and like my heart is beating at a normal pace and I'm having fun with it. But like normal version of Emily is freaking out at the idea of speaking in front of 90 people and holding space and getting people to quiet down. So yeah, I like that idea of the monster and identifying the monster.
And then your Sasha Fierce is the one talking to that monster, right? Your inner Sasha Fierce is like, hey, I'm not going to let you talk to Emily like that, right? I'm not
gonna.
Amelia can be a real biatch sometimes.
Yeah. So, the other word, I feel like this has been a big keyword session episode. Yeah. If you don't resonate with the word anxiety, I feel like some people might get defensive around that. One word that I have heard, I think every single client I have ever worked with and or every human I've ever met resonates with is overwhelm. At some point, yeah. And I think there's a lot of relation there, but do you have just some high level tips on how people, coaches, whether they're feeling overwhelmed with to-do lists, they're feeling overwhelmed in their business, they're feeling overwhelmed in their personal lives, how we can rein it in and move on or feel less overwhelmed?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like those are all very like, situation specific. But I think, for one, if you're feeling overwhelmed with emotion, like you're feeling all the things, the first thing to do is to notice it, name the emotion. So Dr. Dan Siegel, who's a neuropsychologist out of UCLA, says, name it to tame it. Right? If we don't even know what we're thinking or feeling, then we can't address it. So I equate it to being at the beach. And like, if you try to like stand in these big waves and either ignore them or try to push them away, you're going to get toppled, you're going to get sand in your suit. It's going to be really uncomfortable. But if you can address them and be on your surfboard or your boogie board or whatever you like to do, then you can surf them and go in and out, right? So naming it to tame it is the first thing that I always think to do. The second thing is to check in with your body. What's going on? Is your heart racing? Is your stomach hurt? Do your fingers and toes feel tingly? Are you really sweaty? Because our body sensations are the first alert that something is wrong. So when that amygdala is triggered, it sends through our nervous system that fight flight, right? We're going to have to fight or we're going to have to get the heck out of here. So we better like start pumping that blood. We better start cooling our body down. We better start tensing our muscles in case we need to like punch something. So it literally sends the signals to our body to get ready to fight or run. So if we can pay attention to that and take even 10 seconds to breathe, to pay attention and to breathe into that place, to remind ourselves that we are in a safe place, that we're not in danger of death. Another thing is if we can bring our senses to attention, the senses are located in the back of our brain, which is really far away from the amygdala. So if we can fully engage our senses, it literally, our amygdala cannot be triggered at the same time. So there's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5 things you feel, 4 things right? 4 things you hear, 3 things you can smell, 2 things you can touch, and 1 thing you can taste. You can mix those around if you don't like that order, but that is your classic thing that psychologists tell people to do when they're having a panic attack, because it brings you back. So those are kind of some tangible things to do. In terms of overwhelm with like a list, the first thing to do is to figure out what works for you for organizing that. Right. So I was just talking to a mom and a daughter yesterday, and this girl cannot turn in assignments. She's having a really hard time, missing assignments everywhere. And her mom's like, I have bought her 25 planners. She won't use them. And the girl's like, I can't do a planner. Well, you think about the executive function goes into a planner, right? You have to be at school and all those different classes, take it out, look at the board, decipher what you're supposed to write it down in the right place with the right, go on and on and on. So figuring out what works for you and not relying on this idea that there's a one size fits all. So for instance, what works for me is I actually use a computer program that is made for executive dysfunction, and that is what helps me. My daughter, all my kids are also neurodiverse. You guys know that, but people listening might. So we live in a house of diversity, systems everywhere. My oldest daughter uses different colored sticky notes. So when she's feeling overwhelmed, we have trained her brain to spend about half an hour with her sticky notes, and her wall then looks like this beautiful rainbow, but it's different classes. It's what she needs for college applications. It's what she needs for ballet. It's what she needs for work. And that helps her, right? My middle daughter needs a big calendar, and she still needs my help, because remember, her brain is under construction. She's 14. So we sit down with the big calendar and we calendar out everything she needs for the month. And we have it somewhere where she can see it. And once a week, we have a check-in. How's the calendar going? Do we need to add anything? Let's look on Canvas. So those are for kiddos, obviously, but figuring out what works for you and knowing that you can try different things, and that's okay. It's okay to give yourself grace if something doesn't work for you. That just means it doesn't work for your brain. And there's a million other things that you can try. But I do think that overwhelm of things to do, what ends up happening is we get into task paralysis. Then we're just like, okay, I can't do any of it. I'm just going to sit here and freeze and not do any. And that's your brain, fight, flight, or freeze, right? There's too much. So play dead. But if you can figure out one step at a time, and there's no right or wrong, right? Some people, the easiest task first, some people, the hardest task first, but it's really taking the time to find a system of strategies that work for you. Does that?
I love all of those suggestions and those ideas, and also knowing that it's not like a one size fit all solution for everyone. While Trello might work for me, writing it down might work better for you, or ClickUp might work better for Lex. It's funny, my dog is shaking next to us too, and I'm like, what's her? It's about to thunderstorm, and I'm like, fight, flight, or freeze. She is
I have a little anxiety dog freaking out right next to me.
Oh yeah. I know. It's like, she literally, I feel like she's gonna give herself a heart attack from the trembles. But I think that's such a great lesson to take away, Corie, that for the individual that's listening to this and being like, oh my God, everyone says X, Y, and Z works for me, and it didn't work for me, to know that, to go back to the drawing board, to seek out help, and to find a solution that is custom to you, because there's many solutions out there, and it isn't a one size fits all thing. So on that note, how can people learn more about you, your services, and working with you?
Yeah, so you can find me at whitelincoachingservices.com, or at Wightlin Coaching Services on LinkedIn. I do offer a free 30-minute connection call. And so if anything on here resonated with you, or if you want to problem solve your system or want to talk more about what neurodiversity is or have questions, I would love to hop on a call with anybody, especially if you listen to Em and Lex, because I'm a huge fangirl of them. This is like the coolest thing ever to be.
It's mutual, Corie. It's 100,000,000,000%.
1,000%. We reference you daily. Don't worry. Well, it is kind of a cool example, though. I think Corie found us through our podcast.
Yep.
So this is a fun full circle moment. Corie, one last question about working with you. Is there a specific type of person that should be reaching out, or everyone and anyone?
So, my specialty, or what I feel most called to, is if you do find yourself as a neurodiverse person, whether you're self-diagnosed or diagnosed officially by a doctor. I feel like as a neurodiverse person myself, raising neurodiverse kiddos, also all of my obsession with the brain, those are the folks that I feel like I can relate to the most. But if you're a parent of a neurodiverse kid and you need support that way, that's also a place that I land, where I can support you as a parent and with your kiddos. So I think if the neurodiversity side of this talk resonated with you, definitely reach out. But I also work with folks that are just, need some support with executive functioning for whatever reason, trauma, life change. So if that's where you find yourself, please reach out also.
You guys just got a small inkling and taste of the genius that Corie is. We could not recommend her any more highly. I've actually even hired Corie to teach me how to help other clients through Overwhelm, because it's not something that I feel is my zone of genius. So she's an incredible human. She's brilliant. We're going to include the links to all the things in the show notes. Corie, last thing, you get to give the homework for this episode before we sign off.
Oh my gosh. Whew. I gotta breathe. That is so exciting. Okay. I think the homework is, next time you're noticing your inner critic, spend some time, whether it's notes in your phone, in your journal, on a scrap piece of paper, writing down what that inner critic is saying to you, and spending 5 minutes figuring out what is truthful, what is helpful, and what is kind, and what you really can say to yourself, and make a plan for that next time, and write it on a sticky note and put it on your computer or your window or your wherever it is that you'll see it. Is that okay, homework?
That's brilliant. We're going to do it, Em. Well, I'm going to do it at least. Maybe you don't need to, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Assigned to me.
Lexie will then put it into our click up and finish it beautifully. I love it. Well, Corie, thank you for joining today's Ready, Set, Coach.
Come on, sing with us, pod.
Ready, Set, Coach podcast.
Ready, Set, Coach podcast.
We'll see you the next time. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye. If you're enjoying the Ready, Set, Coach podcast, please leave a review wherever you are listening. For more information about Ready, Set, Coach, visit readysetcoachprogram.com.